This video covers requirements gathering. We'll cover who gathers requirements, how to gather requirements, how to organize requirements, and how to properly format a requirements statement. What is a requirement? A requirement is a capability needed by a user to solve a problem or achieve an objective. Notice the user focus. A requirement is what the user needs. A requirement statement answers the question, what must the user do? Or what must the product do? But never, how will we do it? Within limits. The caveat within limits means we start with the user needs, the problem space. But as we add detail, we approach a solution. Nevertheless, always keep in mind what it is the user is trying to do, not how can it be done. We don't want to limit the development team from finding new or novel ways of solving the problem. For this reason, requirements don't specify how to do something, just what needs to happen. Only look at what it is the user wants to do. This is a subtle but important distinction. With this focus on users, who actually gathers requirements? Or maybe I should say, where do the requirements come from? If you are watching this video, and you are probably a BA or business analyst. This means you are eliciting the requirements from the user. You are documenting the requirements, but the requirements belong to the users. You are just trying to understand them so they can be shared with the rest of the development team. Requirements come from many people in your organization, from the company president on down. Executives, directors, sales and marketing, supervisors, managers, customer service. What do all these people have in common? They all work with the customer, users, and stakeholders. In fact, they are the users and stakeholders. Why these people? Like I said, they are the stakeholders. They understand the business and the customers. Steve McConnell is the author of several landmark books in the software development industry. He had this to say about requirements gathering. The most difficult part of requirements gathering is not the act of recording what the users want. It is the exploratory, developmental activity of helping users figure out what they want. These are the people and organizations who will be affected by the system and who will have a direct or indirect influence on the system requirements. This means for requirements gathering, you need to be able to communicate well, especially the part of interpersonal communications that is listening. What are the users saying, and what are they not saying? You need to be curious and detailed. Why do requirements management? The sheer number of requirements on any given project makes getting useful information difficult without some kind of organization. A single change to an existing product or application can involve 10 or more requirements. Larger changes and even small projects can require hundreds of requirements. Larger projects can quickly escalate into thousands of requirements. What is needed is a planned process for managing requirements over the life of a project. Grouping related projects makes them easier to locate and avoids overlapping and duplication. The partitioning of requirements allows different groups to work with their part while maintaining visibility with the other groups. Finally, a requirements management process is necessary because requirements are a dynamic aspect of the software development lifecycle. At most companies, the development process is iterative, meaning requirements gathering is not a one-time event. As stated earlier, requirements are what the user needs. Requirements gathering logically starts with the stakeholder needs. A stakeholder is typically a customer or user, but can be anyone who influences or is influenced by the processes we are trying to document with requirements. Stakeholders can be executives, regulatory organizations, sales and marketing, customer service, infrastructure, as well as our customers and our customers' customers. When documenting stakeholder needs, we are purely in the problem space. We are looking at the customer or user's business processes. What are they trying to do? What are their goals? As the stakeholder needs become understood, functions meeting those needs begin to emerge. Often, at this stage, we can begin segregating requirements into functional groups which align with the division in the customer's business. For example, customer service, pricing, sales, accounting. You can also visualize the functions as those items in the application's menu, things like lookups, various entry screens, etc. A requirements management process will allow us to segregate requirements into a logical framework. Under the functional groups will be many functions which meet the needs of a stakeholder or stakeholders. These functions link or trace to the stakeholder needs they address. One measure a requirements management process can provide is a list of stakeholder needs which are not satisfied by a function. This can be used as a gap analysis for estimating the work necessary on a new project. Conversely, we can look for functions that don't align with a stakeholder need. Management should question why are we taking the time and money to implement a function that has no business need. This does not mean we must wait for a customer to ask for something before we can implement it. As internal groups talk with customers, attend conferences, etc., they bring back ideas on the state of the art in the industry. Internal research and development activities will generate improvements in our products. It does mean, in each case, these functions should have stakeholder sponsorship before being implemented. It may be the best idea ever conceived, but if the stakeholder doesn't use it, it's a risk without a benefit. The moral is functions traced to some stakeholder requirement. The next level or layer of requirements are the use cases and data requirements. Functions are implemented by use cases. Data are the model of the business which gets manipulated by the use case. This layer is the source of the comment we made earlier that we document what within limits. We are still documenting what needs to be, but use cases are documenting a process or list of steps which are becoming dangerously close to a how, close to a specific implementation. There are many books and articles on how to do a use case. They range from simple diagrams to incredibly detailed endeavors with strict rules for using symbols and formatting. For our purposes, we only need to understand what a user is doing and have a logical place to organize those requirements. For our purposes, a use case is a concrete set of actions describing what a user does to achieve a particular goal. Use cases identify the different types of users. In most use case terminology, they are called actors. Actors don't have to be people. They could also be other processes or systems that influence or are influenced by the use case in question. To create a use case, we observe users or actors and develop a detailed description of what they are trying to accomplish, what functionality the system provides them. All of this takes place from the viewpoint of the user or actor. What are they doing, or what could they be doing in the future? From here, we can develop concrete examples of the future system in use. When talking with the user or actor or a stakeholder, ask open-ended questions to understand their current process. Ask about exceptions and difficulties, especially of the end users. If you ask a manager about a particular process, you will most likely get the happy path. That's a good starting place. Then ask the user under the manager. Ask about exceptions. Here you will find in general the happy path works, but for this or that customer or situation, there's something special or different that is required. The manager may say, now they enter the address or location. But the user may say, yeah, but I have to go through 8 screens and back to get to the zip code. Look for exceptions and difficulties. We are trying to understand what they are doing and what can be done to improve the process. As you are documenting, think about what you would need to know to do their job successfully. Always look at what they are doing. For example, say you are watching a user enter an address. The how is they are clicking on an address field and typing in a street address, and tab over to the city field and type in a city, and tab over to the state and clicking the down arrow to select the state from a list. Then tab over to the zip and enter in a zip code, and then click the save button in the lower right hand corner. This is great. This is how they are doing it, but this is not what we are looking for in requirements. What you want to document in requirements is what they are doing, and the what they are doing is entering a customer address. And the address shall include a street, city, state, and zip code. This is the information we want to document. Note, if we make entering the city, state, and zip code hard requirements, the how requirements, we limit the possibility of entering the zip code first and letting the system look up the city and state. We forever condemn the user to manually entering in information the system already knows. So all we want to do is state what a customer address is, not how to enter it. Data requirements model the customer's real-world environment. For example, customers have a name, usually a first and a last name. They have an address with street, city, state, and zip. They will likely have an invoice or a bill or multiples of these. They will have a product or list of products they are purchasing. Depending on your industry, there will be many other data requirements. Typically, data requirements map to a database table. But keep the data requirements at a what level. What are the attributes? Rarely will the requirements specify a table or database architecture. Leave this up to the developers. They may find a better way to represent the data. All they need to know is what the attributes the business thinks make up the various entities in their world. In this example, we see the definition of a customer entity, and the customer has a first name, and a first name shall be up to 30 characters long and is required. Likewise, the customer's last name. Note requirement 1.4. The actual requirement is a customer shall allow for a second line of their address. The rest of this text is informational. It's additional detail about the customer's address. Note also the second line of the address is optional. While these requirements will most likely map to a database table, nothing here requires this. Actual implementation is a how. These requirements only define what a customer is. Business rules and supplementary requirements support the process. A business rule is a requirement that is not part of the flow of a use case, but informs that use case. In other words, it might affect which use case to use to implement a function. For example, all whole life products should be paid in full before enforcement is a business rule. The statement, all transactions shall have an audit trail for later customer dispute settlement, is an example of a supplemental requirement that supports the overall processing. The requirement statement has a very definite form. They should be numbered. The requirements type is optional. Data, requirements, business rules. The main point I want you to understand is requirements fit within a hierarchy and a purpose. They can and should be grouped. They are not just a long list of user wants. If you don't give them a name, at least give them a number. The actual requirement is a complete sentence with the word shall. There is only one requirement or shall per numbered section. Other sentences and comments help understand the intent of the requirement. At a minimum, the requirement is the shall sentence. By organizing the requirements in this way, we can list them in a spreadsheet or other tool. Comparison of the total number of requirements to the number of requirements so far implemented by the development team gives us a measure of how much work remains on the project. Likewise, with the requirements grouped into functions and use cases, we know what functionality has been implemented and what work remains. Numbered requirements gives the test group a detailed list of things to test. Finally, numbered requirements are quickly passed between groups. For example, the testing group can pass the list of requirements not met as defects for reworking by the development team. In summary, we see that requirements start with a customer or business need and are refined through functions to specific implementations of a use case. These requirements don't stand alone. Rather, they exist in a framework or structure. Requirements are linked together called traceability, such that they support each other. The set of requirements feeds the rest of the development process, including test procedures, design, and documentation.